Welcome, everyone, to Prop It Up. Going into the weekend, we're here to give you all the best player props. We got tonight's NBA game, Major League playoffs are in full swing. Of course, we got college football and NFL. Joining me every week, Mid-Major Matt and Andrew McInnis. We are fresh off of the Thursday night football game. Mid-Major Matt, you want to just go? You want to give us your little Melvin Gordon rant?
Well, I mean, it's even more frustrating because as I went through everything, I was like, Tim Patrick over 2.5 catches looks really good. But then I started reading KJ Hamler. Patrick has less snaps coming and everything. So I'm like, all right, let me pivot. No Phillip Lindsay. We'll go with Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon gets a catch the first time out, first drive. And then he doesn't get any for quite a while. And then the second one comes. And then I turn it off because I'm not watching this game because it's a brutal, abysmal disaster. And then all of a sudden, I read on Twitter, another person who on the prop said, Melvin Gordon dropped the ball. And I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. So I had to go back and look, and it was awful. And I'm angry and I'm sad.
Yeah, he did drop it. It was right in his hands. So, Andrew, did you have anything going on the game last night?
I think Matt's rants are starting to become my best rants, and it's not like I want you to have them a lot, Matt, but when you do have them, they're always entertaining anyway. I had the rushing yards for Melvin. So, it was one of those ones where it's like, hey, there's a winner in my pocket, and then all of a sudden there's it out of my pocket, and there it's back in and out, and then back in. So, it's funny. Listening to a radio show yesterday, people different talking about, you have a guy for receptions over, a guy for yards over. Very hard to go backwards. You can't take away a reception, but with a guy like that, you can go backwards, and that's kind of really frustrating to watch. But I think that it was the right spot, and luckily it ended up ending on a really good bang. So even if I needed a lot, it would have covered. But, you hate to see it kind of get out of your pocket, then back in. But it was good. And that was really the main play I had in yesterday's game. I had a slight small play on Denver. I'm just not bet on the Jets.
This happened to Kareem Hunt, the prop last week. I played it at 61.5. I know it was all the way up to 67.5 in some places. And he was at 68 yards and got tackled for 4 yards on the last play of the game. So Wow. It's so important to shop around to get the best number. I'll give you just a little rant from last week. If you remember on last week's show, I said I wanted to figure out how to attack the Bears on some over props. So I played Mitch Trubisky over 1.5 touchdowns, and he throws his 1 touchdown, and I didn't know he got benched. I was just watching, and I see the Bears quarterback throw another touchdown. I was like, yes, it hit. And my buddy was like, that's Nick Foles, you idiot. That's not Mitch Trubisky. And then I get to watch Nick carve up the hapless Falcons defense.
Don't you dare disparage Nick Foles. He's a saint in this household.
I'm sure he is, and now he's going to be a thorn in the side of Bears fans. So it's safe to say you got the best of Nick Foles, did you not, Matt?
You gotta love it though when a team's 3-0 and they have a quarterback being benched.
Controversy. Yeah.
I mean, and I think that they're going to go to 4-0. Spoiler alert! I think one of my things is I'm going to play the Bears on Sunday. I just the energy you get from a new quarterback, a competent quarterback, is a really good one.
I agree 100%. One of my favorite betting strategies is betting on the new quarterback. There's an energy and there's a lack of film. I think it's just worked over the years for me. And I liked getting Rippin last night, even though he was terrible and threw 3 horrible interceptions. There's something energetic about him. He wasn't great, but
I'm on the complete opposite end of that.
Are you really?
In-game, I think in-game is a strategy. We saw videos floating around all over Twitter about guys getting in-game on once Foles gets in there. But look at the Colts. Besides that first game, which we can call a preseason game for most teams, they haven't played the best teams, but they've handily covered. And I think Rivers is only starting to get better with his connections with his receivers. And the thing that I like the most is that it's not just 1 or 2 guys getting a boatload of receptions. It's like a whole roster. It's a whole grocery receipt of guys, getting the ball. So that should be interesting. I think that in the 23 years I've been on this earth, this is the most pretender, phony 3-0 team I've ever seen in my life.
The Colts?
No, the
Or no,
Bears.
the Bears. Yeah, the Colts.
No, it's the Colts, and they're not even 3-0. By the way, they lost to the Jags.
No, I will say this as a Colts a follower. It's one of the most boring Colts teams I've ever had the pleasure of watching. Like, their games are a snail's pace. It is like watching molasses. It's smart because they're not dynamic and they're all banged up, but man, do they know how to run that play clock down. Man, do they know how to heat up a clock. It's pretty bad. So, all right, let's get to some of the action we got going today. Matt, talk to us about some of the Major League playoff props that's been working for you, not working. What do you got going on today?
Well, I think I picked the wrong pitcher. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say it's the wrong pitcher because obviously he's still in. I have the Yu Darvish over for strikeouts. I haven't been checking in. I saw the 6-1 hit pretty quickly because it was only 3.5. Just to say that Craig Stammen's pitching, or at least starting for the Padres, so there's not going to be any K props for him. And I don't know what Flaherty's is, but some interesting things, as Andrew's talked about, some of these numbers are really high. It'll be interesting to see what Cole's is for Monday when they play the Rays. He's faced them like 19 times this season, so it'll be interesting to see. They've got familiarity. I'll say this. Load up your G-Man Choi. I don't know. Actually, don't know. I hope he's healthy because G-Man Choi has like 4 home runs against Garrett Cole in his career. Wow. And so if he is in the lineup, I want G-Man Choi, DFS, and props all over the place.
And I can attest to that. I've heard Matt mention that numerous times on First Pitch, and the following day, it's just wow. It's just one player that just has somebody's number, it seems.
Like Slam Diego had the Cardinals number the other night. Myers and Bat Flip, as I'm now calling him. That was quite the display. We have NBA tonight. I actually put an NBA prop last week in my NFL package. We talked about it. Gosh, I'm going to miss Marcus Smart. 9-0 to finish the NBA playoffs, hitting his total points, rebounds, and assists. That was just cash it every single night. I'm gonna miss that guy.
Well done.
So, Giannis, that was another one. Giannis under 51.5 total points, rebounds, and assists. That thing hit like at a 10-2 clip. So, I will tell you this, without Bam and without Dragic, I love Anthony Davis on the over points, rebounds, and assists. I think it's sitting at 42.5. I don't know who's going to guard him. I don't know who's going to rebound with him. I know the overs is an obvious play, but I don't know. Matt, am I missing something?
You should ask. I mean, I guess I would say the only thing I worry about is what didn't he have? He had like a game and a half where he had no rebounds. So, I mean, he's going to score a ton of points, but he doesn't rebound the ball like a 7-footer should.
Andrew, got any thoughts on the NBA game tonight?
Yeah, look, I don't do this too often. I don't really like to load up on one person or load up on one team first half, full game, all that kind of stuff. But I think that you look at the injuries and you look at the frustration we've seen I saw actually Ski Prop tweet out both WNBA and NBA finals injuries in both. And I'm looking at the other side. Instead of looking at stocking up here with the LA Lakers, I'm looking at the Miami Heat here.
Nice.
Jimmy Butler. I mean, I think it's one of those ones where I think a lot of people, it's a very, very square play, I guess you could call it, to go ahead and expect him to have a big night. But I actually locked him in both points and assists, Andy. 22.5 is what the points was. That to me, that was shocking. He's going to have to be in takeover mode. This is one of those, he could drop 30 points, Andy, and they could lose by 20. That's the kind of game that I really think it could be. And, you look at the kind of basketball this Miami Heat team plays, and sometimes the better part about this team was that they were diversifying their points throughout their entire lineup, even their bench action. Now I think, you look at it, Jimmy Butler's going to have the ball in his hands for the majority of the game. And so I'm also on his assist is 5.5. Another one I have for the Miami Heat, Andre Iguodala over 6 points. You're going to tell me
that's
they
a
don't
good
need
one.
a guy like that to step up 6 games or 6 points? They need that. So obviously I got one guy I'm circling to kind of try and take over this game, and somebody like Iguodala as well. I wouldn't talk anybody off a Rondo assist prop because it's just one of those things for me where I get it with AD. He's putting up extraordinary numbers right now, but in a situation like this, something could tell me that we could see a little bit more balanced point scoring throughout the LA Lakers lineup tonight. And I think I'd look more towards assists than I would points. Like AD could have a great game, but it might not be his best game of the series.
Yeah. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that Dwight Howard is having a resurgence and is going to end up with a ring. I cannot wrap my head around this. All right, let's turn our attention to NFL. Matt, what are you, 16-5? NFL?
No, I wish. I'm 15-6 actually is my run right now after.
Sorry.
No, well, I mean, it's just after yesterday's. I mean, the Jets team. Who would have thought the Jets would have 28 points in how they got there with 19 field goals? I mean, it's just. That's just we knew the Broncos defense was bad, and we probably should have thought about this. If you look at these two defenses, the Broncos defense has no one left outside of Bradley Chubb. Thank God the over for the 5.5 sacks came in on that one, and even though all 6 of them came from one side, but there's some interesting props out there, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But yeah, the run is 15-6 right now.
Are you guys playing field goal props at all? Just wanted to ask you guys if that's something you guys ever do, because I used to play them for certain games, but I'm looking back at that one, and I think it's easier to say in hindsight after a game is over. But sometimes you see 2 crappy teams going up against each other. I think it's actually a good opportunity to grab over 3.5 field goals. Any take on that, guys?
I have not looked at field goals, which is crazy because I used to kick field goals, believe it or not.
Well, I think you told me that. Yeah.
So you'd think that'd be the one I gravitate towards, but no. So M-Rob says he just booked the 49ers team total over 24.5 and the Bears team total over 21.5. I believe he was even nice enough to give us a little stat about who are they? Matt, I can't remember. Who are the 49ers facing this week?
I have no idea.
Is it Pittsburgh? No, it's Philly. It's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's a public. It's gonna be a public failure for all this day, as opposed to hidden in the 1:00 slot.
All right, let's get into week.
Speaking
4.
of that one game,
yes, go ahead.
How about Zach Ertz over receptions in that game? I like the Philadelphia Eagles to cover the spread, but I also think they're going to go to Mr. Reliable, and I think that right now, it's so funny, Matt. I feel like I can't talk about the Eagles around you because you just know so much about it. Anything I say is going to be just dumbfounded to you. But look, I just think I look at the reports and the interviews and what Wentz was saying, and it's just like, yeah, when it comes down to it, I just can't get sacked. I got to take care of the ball. It's just the most cliche stuff you can say. Like, yeah, I just got to make sure I'm getting to the right guys and taking care of the ball and avoiding the guys coming at me. It's like, yeah, I think that's how the position quarterback is played. You don't want to get sacked. I think, it's going to, look, we saw how much attention Ertz has gotten already on the season. But I think in this matchup in particular, they're not going to be trying to go for these, complete downfield bombs. They're going to play it safe and look up the middle. I think Ertz over receptions is great. I talked about it with Andy. It kind of sucks that we don't get numbers for all these. I have a few player props listed, more than I did last week, but it's the same thing I've been saying. Sunday or Saturday, even looking at these props, it's just easier to make a bet when you're looking at these numbers. But one that really stuck out to me, I like the +7 here for the Eagles. I like Zach Ertz receptions over.
Let's look at yes, Matt, you have an opinion.
I do not like that because I think it's easier to double him across the middle. You could put a linebacker and a safety on him because there's literally no one else to cover. To me, I'm thinking Greg Ward is the over because he's the only wide receiver left. I mean, it's just
so wouldn't it be the same thought process though? Wouldn't it be the same thing? Like everyone knows it's going to him too?
Well, I mean, it's harder. It's easier to take a tight end, I would say, away from the middle of the field because you could just bracket linebacker and safety as opposed to. I mean, look, they probably both will get doubled, and then it'll be a John Hightower day or a Deontay Burnett day, or I dare you to even say a Travis Fulgham day. Who it should be is a Miles Sanders day, but they won't do that. That's why I don't love taking unders like this, but I would almost take the under on Miles Sanders rushing yards because Doug Peterson just won't commit to the run. He just won't. Sanders should have had 150 yards last week against the Bengals, which leads me to one of the players I like is James Robinson because the Jaguars do commit to the run and they do commit to the pass. So that's why and the number one thing we always talk about, rushing and receiving yard props combined, James Robinson is the guy in Jacksonville. He is the guy. He's getting a ton of touches and shares of touches. And against that Bengals defense, what are we going to do? Gardner Minshew all over the place? No, James Robinson, everything you can get rushing and receiving.
And Matt, I like him too. And the funny thing is I mentioned it last week on the show. I felt so I don't know, shy in the NHL to bet on these guys anytime goal scorer when it was like plus 100 or plus 110. That's kind of how I felt over the first couple of weeks here at the NFL season. I'm done with that. I'm done seeing. I have a few friends that bet player props all the time, and they're cashing these guys minus 120 anytime touchdown scorer. I did it yesterday in the game, and I'm going to do it again. So I'm on Robinson anytime TD scorer. It's one of those things. We use the term value so much across WagerTalk with our podcast, and I think it doesn't matter value here if the guy gets a touchdown. So I think if it's around a price like that, I'm comfortable with it for Robinson to get in the end zone.
One game I've got circled is the Seahawks and the Dolphins. That has all the makings to me for a point score fest. I believe Adams is out in the secondary, as if the Seahawks weren't bad enough. Love Fitzpatrick to carve up this team. I'll be looking at Devontae Parker on the over, Fitzpatrick on the over. And it's not like Miami can stop anybody. I think I think the Seahawks are going to be in a lot of these games all year, and I wonder if this is just going to really wear on them throughout the year. So I that's a game I have circled on a lot of overs. I also love. I haven't figured out how to attack the Ravens just yet, but I love them coming off a loss where they got their asses whooped on national TV to the Chiefs. And what better team to get on the right track than the Washington football team, who's missing Chase Young? So those are a couple games I'll be looking at as well. If we're talking overs, let's talk a little unders. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense has been great. They've been really, really good defenses to play some of the teams on the under. And I got to say, the Chargers, they've been struggling to move the ball and score points against teams with a lot lesser quality defenses. Matt, any value in looking at some of these unders on the Chargers against a good Bucs D?
By the way, you forgot the other guy, Mike Gesicki. I mean, with no Adams and with no Jordan Brooks, this is a Mike Gesicki game to score potentially 2+ touchdowns. I mean, I saw the number is Fitzpatrick as 1.5. I mean, I like that. You're going to have to swallow some juice, which, by the way, and we should bring this up once again for the new people, shop around. Because as you realize now, we talked about FanDuel and DraftKings. There are books that have 5 or 6 yards or juice difference. So make sure if you like a prop before you lock it in, give yourself options because each book has a different price for everything. And you can beat some of these books, with regards to their price. So Gesicki, I think, could score multiple touchdowns. Unders, I don't really take a lot of unders. I'm more apt to get away from a guy. Like the only under I would look this weekend is I was looking at potentially the under for Kyle Rudolph or Irv Smith because they're just not doing anything and they're taking catches away from each other. And but like with regards to that Los Angeles thing, I don't know. I mean, Josh Kelly fell out of favor rather quick in LA. So, and he fumbled, which means there could be more Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I think Eckler's at 43.5. God, that Bucs D is good, and they got Herbert's a rookie. I can see I can see Tampa Bay eating him for lunch. So let's see. Any other games, Andrew, you were really interested in that you got your eye on that you feel got a good read on?
Just as far as that, you were talking about the Miami matchup, I believe. Like I picked up Gaskin in fantasy football, and I was kind of thinking like, yeah, he'll be someone I'll start last week and maybe not keep on the starting roster for my team. And my team's a very wide receiver strong team, but I think, you know what? That's a perfect example. He's a perfect example of what Matt always preaches about, not just grabbing rushing, not just grabbing receiving, but grabbing total yards. I think he could be someone that's very impressive. And I think looking at their game plan heading in against Seattle, it's going to be a lot of, dumping it off and those 5-yard tosses. And he'll really excel in that. A few other ones. One of the ones that I had here was Patriots Chiefs. I like the Patriots to cover the number there, but you got James White. Obviously, some personal problems or matters that was keeping him away from the game. But the same style that I was just discussing in that previous game is kind of what I think that the Patriots are going to do here in this one. They're not going to win the game, the same style that the Baltimore Ravens were trying to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in. They're not going to be able to compete doing 30-yard bombs down the field and trading touchdowns back and forth all night long. It's going to have to be a kill the clock type of game. And I'm looking at James White here for receptions over. When that number opens up, I'll be looking at grabbing that. We saw what Rex Burkhead did. He was getting fed, passes all night long, and I think that's a good one. Also, another one I liked was Lamar Jackson over rushing yards. I think it's, again, seems like kind of a square play. But if you look at what that game was against Kansas City, he's the kind of guy, I actually feel bad for him, guys, because people are either, just like any other athlete, but people are either all over him and just love him to death, or they hate him. This guy can't throw. He's not a quarterback. He might as well be a wide receiver or a running back. I don't know. Where would he be without his legs? So you know what? I'll tell you where he's going to be in this next game. He's going to absolutely dominate. He already had a pretty good performance rushing, and it was a bad game for him. So obviously, I think he'll throw the ball better, but I'm still going to go right back to his rushing yards and look for him to have a good game that way.
I want to give someone some fantasy advice. Here's a guy that I bet you can pick up. Go get Jordan Wilkins. He's the backup to Jonathan Taylor for the Colts. Taylor's getting a huge workload as a rookie. I think it's going to catch up to him at some point, and he is one sprained ankle away from being the unquestioned starter for the Indianapolis Colts that wants to run the ball in receptions. And I checked, and he's available in something like 85, 90% of leagues. If you got an extra roster spot, put that guy and just hold on to him. That's a guy that all of a sudden in week 7 or 8 could win you a couple games. So there's my sneaky little play. Matt, I have a question. We've talked about sharp plays and square plays. With all the information that's out there, is there such a thing as a square play anymore?
The people who blindly bet all overs and just see big names and bet overs, that's a square play. But I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there when they look at the props, they just go off of, Russell Wilson, he's really good. I'll take the over no matter what. Now I think it's 2.5, 3 is his number for passing touchdowns. And that's not saying it's a square thinking. It's not necessarily a square play, but it's a square thinking. Just a quick comment to Andrew. I see what you're saying about James White. I always just feel very leery about Belichick. Because, Sexy Rexy had a great game, and then there's Sony Michel, and then there's J.J. Taylor, and then now there's Damian Harris, who I think they activated off the IR. And it should be one of those games with the dump-offs for the running backs, but I just, we talked about it way back in the first show, actually, before you even came on. I just hate Belichick so much in terms of, you
think it'll be too many touches, Matt? Like, too many options?
I think, in theory, he's either going to have 8 or he's going to have 0. It's that's just the way it feels like. And you're very smart at this and you know a lot about football, so I'm not going to tell you not to play it. I'm just saying you're going to be sweating because it feels like he's the type of guy who, if Rex Burkhead, who thought that Rex Burkhead was going to get as many touches as he did last week? His number was 2.5 receptions. Exactly.
And I'll be the first to admit it. I talked about the Sony Michel rushing over, and I'm not bringing that up to pat myself on the back. That was a sweat, Matt. That was definitely a sweat, and he had that one good rush at the end of the game. So I get it, because with the amount of guys he has, you don't really know who his favorite's going to be on any given week. Is that kind of more or less what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, the over-under for receptions for Burkhead last week was 2.5. It's the easiest prop I've ever hit in my life because, he had 2.5, I feel like, or he had 3 in the first drive. Right. It was ridiculous. But I'm just saying he's the guy that if you found something and you think Bill Belichick or his maid or his dog or his wife or whatever, and he's saying he loves James, I do not like guessing what he's going to do.
We got some great questions and comments in the room. I want to go through that real quick. Chad asks, what about Nyheim Hines? He's their receiving back. They do not want him running the ball. They want to get him into open space. He's the last ditch effort. Wilkins will have that job if anything happens to Taylor. Isaiah says Green Bay will not cover with their secondary. Not this week. Matt, do you agree that Green Bay's secondary kind of sucks, and maybe we could look at Atlanta for some over props in the passing game?
Well, I mean, I just read Julio is limited. I read Calvin Ridley's limited. Russell Gage, was limited earlier in the week. So maybe it's not necessarily the place I'm going with regards to by the way, Marshawn Lattimore and Janoris Jenkins aren't playing for New Orleans this week. I mean, that's just,
and neither is Michael Thomas, right?
Neither is Michael Thomas. So to me, this is a Matthew Stafford week. If they decide to go that way, this is a Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones. I mean, in theory, they should have their way with the Saints, which means they won't because they're the Lions. But yeah, I mean, pay attention to the injury reports today. That's the most important thing we can tell you. If you want to get in on your props now, make sure you have the full information as to who's out and who's in.
Andrew, I'll throw this question to you. Raiders are 27th against the run. No way they slow the Bills' rushing attack. Agree? Disagree?
I would agree with that, but the Raiders are a team for me that props, betting against, betting on, totals. I've been shying away. I haven't really been able to figure them out, Andy. So, but speaking of the Bills, how about that Diggs anytime to score prop that I had last week? Oh my God, it was a play. I think that there were two different flags that happened. One of them was like PI. One of them was a holding. Back-to-back touchdowns that they go towards him. Easy catches for him. He ends up cashing that in. But it just seems, guys, that we can circle some guys that are just end zone threats specifically, no matter how much coverage is going to be on them. And I know a lot of the times you can look towards those secondary or third options because number one guy is going to be covered. And I wanted to ask you guys, we saw somebody in the comment talking about Joe Burrow, and because that's going to be not really the most talked about game, the most exciting game of the week, but it's an interesting one as far as props go, I think. And I'm holding AJ Green, guys. Sorry about that, on my fantasy team. Is it one of those things where he's just next in line now, or is it because he's getting covered so much?
I heard in training camp that for whatever reason, Burrow and Boyd just clicked. Like it was just something like they just immediately got on the same page. Paul brings up Joe Burrow's over 274 passing yards against the Jaguars, and I think they just had a chemistry thing. And AJ Green, I don't know if he's checked out. I mean, how long can you be with the Bengals before you just kind of give up a little bit? Matt, we had a question here. Paul says his favorite props are Joe Burrow over passing yards, Kamara over rushing yards, and David Montgomery over rushing yards. My favorite of that group would probably be Kamara. What say you? You like any of those three? Which one's your favorite?
I mean, I can't without Michael Thomas. I would have to say you have to make sure, especially with Kamara, rushing and receiving. Like he had 6 catches, or he had more than 6 catches last week. His total 6.5 receptions, and it's like 50 something yards. But to me, with no Michael Thomas once again, and Drew Brees is now a check down quarterback, I mean, you have to find a way to get both of them in there because he just doesn't rush the ball anymore. I mean, Alvin Kamara is a running back in name, but I don't know how many carries he ended up with last week, but you're doing yourself a disservice if you just isolate rushing or just receiving and just find a way to get both of them in there.
Yeah, this is I mean, Matt, you always make great points. I think this is one of your better points is if you like the rushing yards on a running back, just take the receiving and the rushing because those checkdowns, they add up. And if you get in a situation where they're in a 2-minute drill at the end of the half or end of the game, you can end up with some of those points. And the number's not that much different from rushing to the receiving. And Kamara is a perfect example of that. So if you're looking at Kamara to get over rushing, just jump on the rushing and receiving. No Tariq Cohen and Montgomery. Listen, the Colts are going to muddy this game up against the Bears. I'm telling you, it's gonna be so slow. I would be really worried for any rushing totals over for the Bears just because I think Foles is going to air it out. I think the Colts are going to stuff the line, and it's just going to be a dirty, ugly, boring game. I would struggle to find an over in this, except maybe Robinson. Allen Robinson looked pretty good with Foles. I think Robinson was so sick of one-hop Trubisky or airmail Trubisky that he liked that Foles could actually get him the ball. So Cardinals and Panthers, they got a pretty high point total over-unders, 51.5. The Cardinals looked pretty bad last week. Kyler did. I think it was just an aberration. I would look to get him on some rushing yards. Andrew, anything interesting in this game? We got Mike Davis, Bridgewater. We got the DeAndre Hopkins. Any of those guys interest you?
Yeah, I was looking at this game just from like a betting standpoint. You look at it, it's kind of like a tale of two tapes as far as what both these teams are coming off of. One of the teams is coming off a game where they gave up the ball a lot, and the other team is coming off a game where they got the ball a lot. They got interceptions. The other team gave up interceptions. So I think as far as consistency goes, the Cardinals are going to want to rush the ball, I think, a lot more. They're not going to. Everybody loved this team as an over team, it seemed, at the start of the year. Everyone. Their free plays, whether it was a video on YouTube or whoever was talking on radio shows, is like, yep, Arizona Cardinals over, Dallas Cowboys over, book it every single week. Sometimes when you look at a point we are in the season right now, NFL Week 4, you got to realize what the hell is not working, what the hell is working for me. And I think that a team like this with Kyler Murray, such a talented quarterback, once they get on the board, once they get 1 or 2 touchdowns, they got to slow things down. And I think they'll look towards doing that. So I'm looking for some rushing props here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Kyler get on the move again, because he tried to force too many balls that he shouldn't have even been throwing. And I think he'll trust himself a little more, hold on to the ball tight, and get on the move. So it's funny, guys, because I bet you I've made more QB rushing prop bets this year than actual running back props.
I almost played Darnold last night in rush. I think his total was like 20, and he runs for a 40-some-odd yard touchdown and looked incredible doing it. So I was kicking myself. Matt, any thoughts on the Panthers? I'm looking at Mike Davis over 94.5 total rushing receiving. I thought he looked pretty good last week.
He did. I think anything with regards to the Cardinals, you can't put down until you find out about DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, that he's the guy there, and with him being a true game time decision, if he doesn't play, you look at Andy Isabella, you look at Larry Fitzgerald, you also look at, is Christian Kirk going to play? So to me, any bets involving the props, in theory, this should be a Kenyon Drake game, but Kenyon Drake's been terrible this year, so you can't rely on him at all. So this is a classic case of and I think a lot of the books are going to wait too. If you look at a lot of places, you're not going to see a lot of Cardinal props, because DeAndre Hopkins I've hit every week with his over on the receptions, because that's all he goes to. And so you just have to wait for that.
One team total that I took last week that I'm kind of looking at going, man, is this just a blanket over, is Green Bay. Their offense looked great. I mean, last week their team total was 23.5. They went for 37. Wasn't even close. And they get the Falcons. Matt, you've been doing this a long time. Do you get into one of these things where you just say, you know what, every week I'm playing this one? You mentioned Hopkins, you've hit every week. Do you just get into that mode where say, I'm going to bet every week and I'm going to win 13 of them?
See, the books adjust, though. That's the problem. I mean, like there's going to be a lot of people who want to bet Justin Jefferson after last week. And I wouldn't auto bet a guy like that. He's a rookie. He's a guy. It's Kirk Cousins. They don't throw the ball very well. And so, no, I don't really auto bet. It certainly goes to the top of my list. I mean, I've also hit the Logan Thomas props this year, but I'm not doing it this week against the Ravens. I wouldn't auto bet somebody's over just because they've been good for you so far this season, but it's certainly something that you'll look at.
Nice. Andrew, you ever do that? I'll be honest, I did it with Marcus Smart. I did it with Giannis. It worked. So yeah, but you're right, Matt. The books never adjusted. It was always the same number every single night. So yeah, Andrew.
I haven't really looked at doing that much, Andy, in NFL, just because the matchups are so different every night, and there's so many options and stuff like that. Versus, like you said, with Marcus Smart or and NBA or even an NHL. When you're hot, I guess, but you can't really control as far as the NFL, like when you're getting the ball. You mentioned the Green Bay Packers. I wanted to mention as well, Lazard out for at least 1 month for muscle surgery. So then we got to ask ourselves, what are the next options? Where are we looking here? Because obviously he was a beast, 6 receptions, 146 yards. I wanted to ask you guys, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 1 reception. What was it? 5 yards. Mm-hmm. What's the number we're gonna get on this guy? I don't see any numbers yet, but he's actually someone I looked at and thought about here for heading into week 4 as far as over on receptions go.
I actually have an answer for that. My family's actually from Green Bay, so I talk to him all the time. Aaron Rodgers did I believe it was a local show, and they actually specifically asked about him, and they said that the defense faded to Marquez, and they said that's why Lazard was open. They used a lot of Valdez-Scantling to take some coverage away from Lazard, and that's why Lazard had such a big game. They said it was nothing that Scantling did wrong. It was just they saw a huge and did you hear Lazard? It was one of my favorite football quotes last year when Aaron Rodgers picked him up from practice and said, put that guy in. He's big, he's strong, he's running better routes than all these guys. He had a big game, and they interviewed Lazard after the game. They were like, hey, first game, you did good. How do you feel? And he goes, I was made for this shit.
Oh, wow.
Ever since then, he's been one of my favorites.
That reminds me of a story I heard for Taylor Hall in the NHL. Everybody always knows about how cocky he's been, and apparently he's gotten better over the last year or two. Apparently, I heard he was doing his high school GED or his just getting his high school exams done, and he just wrote, screw this shit. I'm going to the big league. And he just wrote that out and walked away. And the teacher picked it up and was like, so, just one of those things where when you think you're all that, sometimes you might be all that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Matt, all right. Anything else that we've missed? Oh, we got a couple questions about the Vikings and the Texans. I cashed on Kirk Cousins under 21.5 completions. I think I'm going to be playing that again as long as they give me the same number. The Texans are horrible against the run, and the last thing the Vikings coaching staff wants to see is Kirk Cousins dropping back to pass. I see a big game for Dalvin Cook. And Kirk Cousins only throwing on 3rd and over 12 yards or in a 2-minute drill. Vikings, Texans, they got that at 53.5. The books are telling you a lot of points. Not sure if I agree with that. What do you think, Matt?
Well, first off, let me just get this off my chest for a second. I fell short on that Darvish K-prop by 1 because the Cubs were scared of Darvish versus Chad Wallach, the catcher. So, of course,
I had it too, Matt. I had it too.
Kimbrel, of course, comes in and strikes out Wallach because Wallach is a 1-something hitter, and they take Darvish out right beforehand. And yeah, that's just the way it's gone. I missed the Tanaka strikeout prop by 1 because for some reason Major League Baseball decided to start a game in the driving rainstorm. And then with the Gordon debacle last night, I'm hitting it really well right now in the old props. So that's
why did they start that game in the rain the other night?
I don't understand.
Ridiculous.
I don't understand why you took out Darvish. And 94 pitches, by the way, against Wallach, who's a terrible hitter. I could strike out Wallach, so that's very frustrating. So, okay. You asked about the Vikings.
The Vikings and the Texans game. Yes.
Well, I think like what Andrew said, this is the perfect Dalvin Cook to score a touchdown prop. And it's going to be a minus, but I mean, who else is going to score? Because if I remember correctly through my notes, the Texans' number 1 cornerback is not terrible. I don't see Jefferson scoring again. So I could see Cook scoring multiple touchdowns, but if you want to lock in at minus price, Cook to score a touchdown anytime, that's probably not a bad way to go in this one.
I like the way you're attacking that one, and I like Deshaun Watson. Boy, talk about a brutal schedule for Deshaun Watson to start off the year. I feel like people may be down on him a little bit, and getting this horrible Vikings secondary might be a pretty nice get right game for him. Rob in our room says he likes the Texans over 24.5. I think based on what they're giving you the over under, I would say that's probably a pretty good bet.
And Andy, you mentioned you hated this number as far as the total goes, and that's why I think even more so it's good to look at props in games like this. You see a high total, isolate something, and like Matt said, with a guy like that, you can look at him to score because you're getting that high total. The total is telling you there's going to be some touchdowns, not just field goals. Someone's going to be in the end zone. It's going to be a threat. And who else to go for? Who else are they going to go to? And that's the biggest problem, I think, in that. And I've readily admitted it numerous times that I was that guy in both hockey and football going for a bit of a better price, trying to get that plus 300 goal scorer in the playoffs for hockey when the goal scorer is the guy that was plus 110. Same thing with the NFL, looking at these RB1s. They're there for a reason. I was so mad, guys, because Gaskin had a great game, nothing crazy against the Jaguars. I think they went for him like 2 or 3 times straight, and he just got stuffed. He's on like the third yard line or something, 3-yard line, and he just got stuffed. And it's just like so frustrating. It means the difference, as far as anytime goals or touchdown score plus fantasy. But these guys are going to get their touches. Is my point. It's not like it's not like we're taking a long shot here. There's a reason why the odds are what they are.
Yeah. Well, poor Tammy from Facebook wants us to talk about Juju Smith-Schuster. I like his under this week since they're not going to be playing this week, since they get their bye. But yes, against the Titans, I would have liked Juju to do that. I think the Titans would have slowed down the running game, and Big Ben would have thrown a lot. So sorry, Tammy, you'll have to wait till next week to get your Juju Smith-Schuster prop going. All right, we're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon. Andrew McInnis, tell us what you got going on.
Yeah, just NFL 3-pack up at WagerTalk.com. 1 UFC play up for tomorrow. Don't forget to watch Andy's show, UFC Fight Night Live. I think that's what it's called. It's just I tuned in. I've been tuning in all the time, and one of these days I'm going to hop on with you. I'm going to ask you if I can come on and talk. And what better way to, go hop on a WagerTalk stream and have a beer? Oh my God, love to have a beer with you guys live on a stream. So, yeah, that's all I have right now. One NBA play up and the 3-pack up in the NFL. I don't do college, but so many guys are kicking ass in college at both Sports Memo and WagerTalk. So lots of great action. And I want to mention as well, before we close things out, we have a 1-day pass available now. Everyone used to always ask, hey, is there a 1-day option or anything like that? You don't have to just go and look at an actual package. You can go to anyone's profile and just buy for $39 a 1-day pass. And for me right now, doing a little bit of French Open tennis action, doing the Korean baseball stuff still, it's hilarious handicapping this Korean baseball stuff still. I've just been isolating a handful of pitchers that are just lights out. So if you bought a pass from me today, you would have gotten that French Open action, Korean baseball, my NFL 3-pack, and my NBA play for a lot less than you would have actually got buying all those individually.
Good stuff, Andrew. Mid-major Matt, talk to us. What do you got?
Well, so here, I'll give you a tip. Tonight, I took for my clients, I took over 41.5 points for BYU. Book it. They're going to score 41 tonight. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So if you want to go put $1 down, I'm just saying, if you want to put $1 down on BYU to score exactly 41 points tonight, that might actually hit the way it's been going as of late. But as soon as we're done, I'm going to start putting up the college football stuff. I do have a free play on my page. I like the over tonight in the Campbell Wake Forest game. I got it at 67. I want to say it's up to 69 now. Still a little bit of value there. I'll have some college football up. I'm cutting down my list of 30 player props to about 8 or 9, and I'll put those up as well. And so there'll be a full weekend Saturday and Sunday of football on sportsmemo.com.
Nice. I have 2 UFC plays. I have my first ever 5% UFC play. And yes, Takedown Live is back. I worked with WagerTalk. We actually now own the YouTube channel Takedown Live MMA. So WagerTalk's worked with us to get our own UFC thing going. So we will be doing our live UFC show from our own YouTube channel. I'm very excited. WagerTalk's going to help me out with that. I will have player props up. I already had the player prop package up for last night, and you can jump on board. I have no NASCAR up and no golf this week. Decided to play it safe and concentrate on the player props. All my stuff can be at WagerTalk. But crazy enough, we have the Masters in golf coming up. I'm already started research on the Masters, which is coming up in about a month. So
golf
that should be a lot.
So weird, Andy.
It's been so fun. Yeah, it's just a garbage tournament this week. I decided to just play it safe. But UFC first 5% play, player props. I'm on 8-2 run, so feeling good. Got a lot of stuff I like. All right, everyone. Hey, thank you so much for your comments in the YouTube room. You guys provide us such good content, so many good questions. I can see Rob is with you, Matt.
BYU will go
on
over.
BYU, baby. It will. It
41
will
points.
Go over.
41.
So, all right, guys, let's have a great weekend. Hope everyone makes a ton of money out there. Get all of our stuff at WagerTalk and Sports Memo. Thanks for joining us on Prop It Up, and we will see you next week.